Queen World of the Insectoid Empire, Brood Chamber of the Hive Mother, 4th cycle, 384.97 years, Insectoid Solar Calendar, June 14, 2176 AD. The Hive. Mother woke up, deeply disturbed by the visions that intruded on her long-needed rest period. She felt even more exhausted than she did before going dormant as she glanced around the brood chamber to ensure that the terrible thoughts did not follow her to the world of the living. All was as it should be, and she laid her large black eyes on Bandit Friend, who was standing in front of the only tunnel that allowed access to the chamber. Just like before, he was facing the opening, and she quickly glanced at the small bioluminescent chronometer on the far wall that marked the passage of solar hours by the death rate of the single-celled bacteria within it. She calculated the rate of decay in her mind based upon the level of remaining fluorescence within the crystalline tube. 17.2 solar hours had passed since she went dormant. The length of time shocked her. Until now, she had never been dormant for longer than 6 solar hours, ever since she first emerged from her pupae 214 cycles ago. Perhaps this is why she felt worse than before. A more disturbing thought quickly followed that one, and she felt it bring the fear of death along with it. Is my time to go into the world of death drawing near? She felt her ancestors within stirring with unease at her morbid thoughts, and the hive mother within made it known she wished to share thoughts. Reluctantly, she opened her mind, terrified of what her advisor would share. Daughter of ours, why do you think such thoughts? It is not your time to join us yet. The Empire and your sister queens need you now more than ever. Your daughters need you now more than ever. I cannot help it, Hive Mother. We do not know when our time comes, and I do not like that I do not know how much longer I have before joining you. How many cycles did you have before you went to join your ancestors, Hive Mother? I was fortunate, daughter of mine. The Empire was in a time of peace during my long reign as Hive Mother, and we were in the process of claiming many suns and worlds for hives. There was sustenance for all, and my daughter queens loved each other and their hive mother more than they loved the power they could have seized for themselves if they chose to. I reached 346 cycles since emerging from my pupae before it was my time to enter the world of death. My daughter queens let me expire peacefully, and I did not have to endure the pain and betrayal of seeing one of my daughters entering the brood chamber with the ceremonial dagger like many hive mothers before me, and after me did. And your hive mother, how many cycles did she have before it was her time? 157 cycles, my daughter. She could have lived longer, but she was cruel and made of a spirit of wrongness. She killed many drones and daughter queens without cause, and the hives were filled with a never-ending fear that crippled us and made life dark. I think her mind was defective, and her bad reign as hive mother finally ended only after I plunged the dagger in between her eyes to save what remained of my sister queens. I think she was secretly grateful that I came at last with the dagger. She did not have her soldier drones cull me, and her thoughts were grateful when she saw me. I think she knew she was made of wrongness and wanted her tormented spirit to leave the world of the living. And the hive mother before yours, the daughter that became hive mother after you, 307 cycles, 297 cycles. The one after my daughter lived 189 cycles, but that was when the time of peace ended, and the queens and hive mothers became increasingly hungry to increase their own power at the expense of their hives and daughters. So I cannot truly know how many cycles I have remaining in the world of the living. One of my still loyal sister queens could cull me a cycle from now, or one of my coming daughter queens could cull me 20 cycles from now. I do not like that I cannot truly know how many cycles I may live. How many cycles did the oldest hive mother live since the time of our awareness? 349 cycles, but that was long before we left our birth world. I remember when I reached 345 cycles, and I could feel my mind beginning to fail, though my body was still capable, if not slower and more fragile. I remember being ashamed of my failings and trying to hide my weaknesses from my daughters. I think they knew, and they took on the burden of ruling the hives for me like good daughters who loved their hive mother. It was difficult to remember things, and tasks would take far longer to do, and I would often forget why I was doing them. It became increasingly difficult to control the drones, and I found myself spending more time in the memories of my ancestors within. I think our minds are not made to go on past 350 cycles after emergence. So perhaps that is the limit of our natural lifespan, my daughter. This makes me feel better, though it does not seem like enough cycles in the world of the living. I suppose I should be grateful for such a long life. Do you know that the natural lifespan of the ones who created Bandit Friend is typically less than 100 cycles without their clever interventions? They have a special caste in their hives that helps them defeat illnesses and extend their lifetimes to an average of almost 120 cycles now, and they think they can extend that further to 150 cycles in the time to come. I think they will someday achieve this. I did not know this, my daughter. It is sad that they are cursed to live such short lifespans, though it might explain why they are so clever. Perhaps their short lifespans force them to achieve as much as possible before they go join their ancestors in the world of death. We, who live much longer, do not feel this urgency, and so our cleverness suffers as a result. We also hoard our knowledge from our sisters, and I think this is another advantage our new animal friends have over us. They share their knowledge with each other, and though they are only a few billion compared to our trillions, they achieve much more because of this. We who reside within you think much on this. We think to ourselves, what cleverness of the mind they have, what gifts for making wondrous things they have. They give life and thoughts to machine animals like we give life to eggs, and they make weapons and ships that already surpass our own, though we are much older than they. We think to ourselves, what will they achieve in the time to come? We think this, and we do not like the answer. Think on it, my daughter. We copied the engines and weapons of the persecutors and the other animals, as well as other things we find useful. We did not create these things ourselves. Soon the animals will far surpass us in power and cleverness, and we fear for the Empire and our daughters in the world of the living because of this. I thought this too, Hive Mother. I feared for the Empire and my sisters and daughters as well, but now I do not. I see them for what they are now because of Bandit Friend, who fought to protect me. I see them for what they are now, because of the animals who came to fight and save me in the Empire, even though we had yet to make peace between us. When that terrifying animal ship put itself in the path of the traitors to save my daughters, I did not understand why. I asked Bandit Friend to explain why to me, and as he did so, I felt great shame for what we have done to the animals ever since we came here to take sons and hives that were not ours to take. We who send millions and billions of our daughters to their deaths because we can always make more, never valued the ones who serve us. To the animals, each life is precious, but our new animal friends believe in a concept that goes beyond that. Bandit Friend explained the concept of sacrifice and duty that compels them to fight for others who cannot. This is why they fought us until either they were no more or we were no more for the tree and canid animals. I asked Bandit Friend if they would do this for us as well, even though we were enemies and killed many of them. He told me that the animals who created him will never forget how our guardian fleets fought and died to save their daughters in the Forbidden Zone when the persecutors came. He told me we have already spilled ichor for each other, and that to our new animal friends, this more than anything else is what truly matters to them. He said because of this we were already sisters, though we did not know this yet. Yes, we felt as you did when we listened to the thoughts of the machine animal. We too felt the same shame and grief. We believe the machine animal, but we still advise you to be wary of them. They are not of the hives, and though we can understand each other enough to convey concepts, they are different from us, just as we are different from them. We think to ourselves, can we truly know them if we cannot share the thoughts of our minds with them directly? How are we to know what their true motivations are if we cannot see for ourselves? Just as we think this, we know they think this of us too, as is right and proper. Daughter of ours, it is up to you to make a new way forward for the Empire. But it is also your duty to ensure that the way of the hives remains our way if we and the animals defeat the persecutors. It is who we are, and it is who we must remain. We know many changes must be made to ensure the survival of the Empire and our species. But if the way changes too much, then are we the same as we always were? Or will it be as if the animals changed us so much that we might as well have been conquered or exterminated? I feel this too, Hive Mother. But I will wait to share thoughts with the animal Hive Mother before I allow myself to be swayed by such fears. The time is coming soon when I will share thoughts with her, and we will see for ourselves. She never finished her thoughts as one of the many focusers surrounding her began to vibrate and brighten, and as she looked towards it, she saw Bandit Friend skittering towards her. She quickly put up her claws in salutation to Bandit Friend, before gently picking up the now fully activated focuser and gazing into it, focusing all her mental energy as she reconnected to the part of her essence within it. She could feel the mind of the command drone through the other focuser, and she opened her own mind to her daughter's thoughts. They came, filled with panic and indecision, a torrent of emotion that became her own as she tried to control the sharing. She needed to see for herself, and she told the command drone that she was going to take her. She felt the surprise of her daughter that she would even ask even as the command drone willingly opened herself to be taken, and she went into the focuser with her essence. She emerged in the next focuser of the relay 500 light cycles away, and she paused for a moment to take in the sight of the brilliant blue pulsar the focuser was orbiting, mesmerized by the strobing lights it was putting out as it spun hundreds of times per solar second. She felt herself becoming enraptured by the beauty of it, and a deep despondency settled on her essence as she was reminded of her prison in the brood chamber. She would die without ever being able to see such things with her own eyes ever again, and she felt regret for not exploring the wonders of the galaxy more when she was still a queen. I must ensure my coming daughters do not know this regret as I do. Perhaps they can go with the animals on their ships that look for such things to see and experience for themselves, and I can know such joys again through them. They will be better for it, I think, and it will encourage a better bonding with our new animal sisters. With the heavy sadness burdening her, she took one last look at the pulsar before forcing her essence to journey to the next focuser in the relay. She saw more wondrous things at each relay, her regret growing each time until she finally reached the sixth and last one, which was being held within the claws of the command drone. She gently entered the mind of her receptive daughter, easing her way in and caressing it with love as she tried to calm the panic and worry consuming it. She now saw out of eyes that were not hers, and she almost instinctively began to make the biomolecular changes to the pheromone sacs before she stopped herself just in time. If she did that, she would have to cull the command drone, and she remembered what Luna had shared with her about being a command drone and love without expectations, of knowing they could die at any time because it was the way it had always been. Instead of subsuming her daughter, she compartmentalized her mind so they would both control and see. And again she felt the surprise of the command drone, who was sure she would be culled after the Hive Mother took her but still opened herself anyway, like an obedient daughter was supposed to do. "Show me, my daughter." The command drone obeyed, and she felt the claws that were not her own pressing the fleshy protuberances on the control panel in front of her several times before the viewers displayed the source of their panic. Within the icy ring that surrounded the solar system, there were thousands of ships, and many more hexads of ships were arriving every solar second. She felt fear gripping her essence as she searched her daughter's mind to understand where they were located within the Empire. A moment later, she gained access to the knowledge she was seeking. They were within the furthermost system along the border of the Empire that faced the void between the legs of the galaxy, and she felt confusion as she reoriented their current position in her mind's eye. This is not along the same axis as the Forbidden Zone, she realized as her own panic grew to match what the command drone was feeling. Most of the ships she had available were positioned along that axis, because that was where they were expecting the persecutors to come from, and they were hundreds of light cycles and many solar hours away in a different part of the Empire. She needed to get control of the situation to properly assess the threat, and she made the command drone order the powered-down cruiser engaging in Crypsis behind the last gas giant to go out from behind it with cold gas thrusters and focus all their antennae on the invaders. After several solar minutes that felt like many solar hours passed, she received very confused thoughts from the command drone in the cruiser, asking her to enter her mind to see for herself what the cruiser's antennae were detecting. She left the command drone of the Hive ship she was on to enter the mind of the other one on the distant cruiser. and she looked at the viewer with eyes that were not her own for a long time, trying to make sense of what she was seeing. The animal ships now numbered 2 to the power of 13, and more hexads were still flashing out. But they were not the same ships of the persecutors that had come and killed her daughters of the Guardian fleets in the Forbidden Zone. Nor were they all the same, and the sheer abundance of ship sizes, colors, and shapes confused her greatly as she tried to make sense of what she was seeing. Is this an invasion of the Empire by other animal swarms we have yet to come across? She wondered as the cruiser's antennae kept capturing the light of the invader swarm and displaying it on all the viewers. Most of the ships were heavily damaged, while some of them looked like they were on the verge of collapsing at any moment. The damage was consistent with fighting damage, but was it because they were attacking others or because others were attacking them? What is this? What do I do? She thought frantically as she tried to think of a way to confront the newest threat to her empire. I wish Bandit Friend could have come with me. He would know what to do. The thought of Bandit Friend made her think of one of the first times they shared thoughts, and of when she asked how the animal ships could speak to each other without sharing thoughts. He had explained to her their use of electromagnetic frequencies that could share thoughts and visuals, and he also explained the concept of first contact. She accessed her memories for a particular and intriguing first contact method used by the animals when they first came across each other in space, and how they used to use light to share mathematical formulas amongst themselves as the first basis of thought sharing before they learned how to truly share thoughts with the sounds they make. She remembered how logical and clever it was to use math as a way of sharing thoughts, and the embarrassment she felt for her ancestors, never thinking of it since the whole of the universe was based on math, for both animals and the hives. Perhaps she could do the same here. They were obviously not the persecutors, and if she could somehow share thoughts with them, she could make them leave. She shared thoughts with the weapon drones, instructing them on how to modulate the particle beam turrets to emit light pulses before she went deep into herself to think on how to use math to share thoughts. Mathematical formulas appeared in her mind, and she concentrated on converting them to light pulses that were easily understood. The easiest way would be to use prime numbers, she decided, followed by more complex mathematical formulas if they shared the same thoughts back to her. She felt excitement coursing through her as she analyzed the problem facing her and realized that for the first time, they were going to try to share thoughts with new animals instead of attacking them outright like they always have since the time of their persecution. She created the appropriate light pulses in her mind, and she used the command drone's claws to activate the particle beam turrets. Slowly, she began to pulse out prime numbers towards the animal swarm, and she waited impatiently for the light to reach them and hopefully for the light of their thoughts to come back. If it didn't work or they turned out to be aggressive, she would have the 2 hive ships and 8 cruisers in the system go into a state of crypsis and track them as she gathered an appropriate force to confront them. She did not have enough ships to protect the whole empire, and she realized with a deep shame that she would have to ask her new animal friends to help her again if these animal ships turned out to be another swarm of persecutors. Tuai 700 DI, 101.4 light-years from Earth. Republic Hive World. The Queen's antennae felt the rapid and familiar changes in the air vibrations in the tunnel leading to her chamber, and she felt excitement coursing through her. Her animal sister with the follicles of fire was coming to play with her, and she skittered over to the bench where her favorite thing to do was placed. She picked it up with her claws and skittered back over to the center of the chamber, before gently placing the board with the black and white squares on the rough-hewn rock of the ground. It had been much too long since she last played, as her duties as a queen took precedence ever since her hive mother left to go make peace with the animals. She remembered that her animal sister's stinger area was soft, and she scurried back over to the bench to grab the supple fiber textiles that her animal sister would place under her abdomen. This ensured her animal sister would not be uncomfortable while they played together, as the challenging game sometimes lasted for many solar hours. A few solar seconds later, her antennae pointed themselves towards the chamber opening as they detected a new presence, and she picked up on the unique scent of the worker drone that always accompanied her animal sister. The drone leaned its head past the edge of the opening and peered at her with its large black eyes as its antennae tasted the air, and she sent the same thought to it as she always did whenever she saw it. Good drone. She felt the emotional response her thoughts elicited in the drone, as it felt a surge of happiness and contentment from the praise it received from the queen. A moment later, her animal sister appeared in the opening, grimacing happily as she murmured at the drone before lightly tapping it on the head with one of her claws. She felt the happiness and contentment of the drone again, as it responded positively to the touch of Amanda Friend, and she could feel the love the drone had for her animal sister within her mind, which made her very happy. She raised her claws in salutations, and Amanda Friend responded appropriately before stepping into the chamber and slowly skittering towards the board and the soft textile bundle the queen had already set up. She signed to her sister, sharing the same thoughts she always did. "Thank you, sister. I'm grateful you have come to play with me." Amanda Friend responded with her claws, no longer requiring the holographic claw sounds to understand her thoughts after the many solar months she had been in the hive. As she made claw signs, the queen peered intently at them, her excitement for the game making her impatient. "I'm happy you have found the time for us to play chess again, Venus. We do not play as often as we used to since you have assumed more responsibility in running the hive in your hive mother's absence. If I remember correctly, you won 3 out of the 5 times we last played. I shall have to rectify that, Venus. There are some tricks I still have up my legs that I have not used yet." The queen lightly clapped her claws together in happiness, just like the animals do, at her sister's thoughts and the insinuation of a challenge before signing to her again. "I anticipated you will remember and make it more challenging this time. You may go first, Amanda Friend." Amanda Friend grimaced at her and sat down on the textiles before crossing her 2 lower legs. The drone, understanding what was about to happen, lay on the ground next to Amanda Friend before pulling all her legs in underneath her. She quickly entered her dormant state, her mind full of happiness and contentment that the queen could easily detect. Amanda Friend began to place the white animal-shaped pieces in their proper places. The queen did the same with the black ones, and they began to play. After many solar minutes, she stared at the board, surprised by the unique and unusual first attacks of Amanda Friend. Her sister was telling the truth. She did have more tricks that she had never used before. She played the rest of the game to its logical conclusion in her mind, and she felt a mild flash of disappointment in herself as she realized she would lose the first game. Still, she will try her best, and she focused her efforts on delaying her defeat for as long as possible. Amanda Friend looked at her and grimaced again, and the queen instinctively knew her sister could sense her thoughts and intentions. She could see the challenge in Amanda Friend's eyes, and she felt her own desire to challenge her sister rising in response. She may lose, but she will fight to the end, just like the animals do when faced with adversity. After looking at her pieces, she looked back up at Amanda Friend and made claw signs to her. "Will you sing for me, sister?" Amanda Friend grimaced at the question before making claw signs back at her. "Of course, Venus. Which song would you like to hear?" The queen thought about the question for several solar seconds before deciding. "The one that has thoughts of the fields of ichor and dancing winds of leaves, and the changing seasons in war and peace." "Can you sing this one again for me, sister? It brings me to a place I feel like I have been before in my distant memories, though I have not been there before." "Yes, my queen. The one you are asking for is the Celtic song called The Voice. Do you want the holographic claw signs again so you can see the thoughts as I sing them?" "Yes, I am grateful for you, sister." Amanda Friend reached up a claw and activated the small device on her thorax before she began to make sounds while she moved a piece. The queen carefully considered the move Amanda Friend had made, the possible counter-moves she could make appearing in her mind. After some thought, she made what she thought would be the best move to delay her defeat, and she looked at the holographic claw signs that were sharing the song thoughts as Amanda Friend sang for her. She felt her essence drifting freely, momentarily forgetting about the game as her sister continued to make beautiful sounds that touched her deeply in her spirit. The song soon ended, and with a deep reluctance, the queen's essence returned to the chamber. The song made her think of Bandit Friend, and she felt the terrible void of his absence within herself. She sent out a thought to him, even though he will never receive it. Imagining her plea crossing the vast distances and entering his mind. "I love you, Bandit Friend. I do not like you being away from me. Please come back to me and fill this void. Queen World of the Insectoid Empire, Brood Chamber of the Hive Mother, 4th cycle, 384.99 years, Insectoid Solar Calendar, June 14, 2176 AD. The Hive Mother returned to herself in the Brood Chamber, utterly exhausted by the efforts of sending her essence back and forth for several solar hours. Bandit Friend was there just as he was before, still as stone while he waited patiently for her to adjust to the transition. After a short time, she was ready to share thoughts with him again, and she made claw signs as she explained the terrible truth of the new animal swarm that was invading her empire. The animals are fleeing a terrible enemy, just as we did when we fled from the persecutors long ago. They speak of an unending enemy that eats them and takes their hives from them without mercy. It must be the persecutors that are attacking them, Bandit Friend. They describe the same ships as the ones in the Forbidden Zone. They are the last of their hives, and they are many different types of animals, though they were of the same empire. They were all joined together, many different hives, in a long peace that lasted for hundreds of cycles, and now they are no more. They want to enter the empire and keep looking for a new hive of safety, but there are too many of them, Bandit Friend. They now number 3 to the power of 9. They say they will not attack or take my hives, but I do not know if this is true or falsehoods, since I cannot see their thoughts. If they are telling falsehoods to trick me and attack, we cannot stop them in time, Bandit Friend. They number 19,683 ships. They must be refugees, Juno. I understand why you do not want to allow them into your empire, but we must do something to help them. I will display a star map for you. Please show me where the system is. From a small lens on his thorax, a star map of the local space appeared in the air between them, and it took several solar seconds for her to figure out the location of the border system where the animal invaders were located. She pointed to it with a single claw digit before signing to him again. We need your help in defeating this invasion, Bandit Friend. Do you think your hive mother will send ships to help us fight them? I cannot risk moving what ships I have from the border facing the Forbidden Zone, and my inner empire defense forces are now depleted because of my traitor sister. Bandit Friend looked at her with his yellow eyes for a long moment before he answered her. Hive Mother, I thought you recently learned that not all animals are bad or trying to attack you. Do you forget this so soon after seeing for yourself how my creators came to fight for you despite us not making peace yet? She was shocked by his insulting and disrespectful thoughts, and she felt a great anger rising inside of her as a brief vision of tearing Bandit Friend in half entered her mind. Just as quickly as it came, it was gone, and a great shame replaced it as she breathed deeply through her spiracles to calm herself. She signed to him again, acutely aware that Bandit Friend was not of the hives, and therefore not subject to the same standards of obedience and proper submission as her daughters. Bandit Friend, you are right. I am also right. I cannot allow such a large and unknown animal swarm into my empire. Would your hive mother allow such a large and unknown animal swarm into your empire? I think not, Bandit Friend. She knew she had trapped him with her logic, and she waited for him to admit that she was right while he stared back at her, his yellow eyes making the tiny side-to-side movements they always did when he was thinking deeply about something. Yes, she would, Hive Mother. She stared at him in shock, wondering if he was telling a falsehood as he continued signing to her. I know you think I am telling you a falsehood, Hive Mother, but I promise you I am not. I will explain to you why my Hive Mother would do this. She would do this because they would have information on the persecutors that we do not have. They might have special tools and weapons or advanced technology that we do not, and we would ask them to share it with us so we may better fight the enemy. She would do this because we could add their ships to our own and increase our numbers to confront the persecutors. Look at my claws, Hive Mother. I have 5 fingers, all fragile and individually breakable on their own. Bandit Friend stopped signing and held up a claw, the 5 digits splayed out. With his other claw, he grabbed one of the digits and jerked on it, ripping it right off the claw and making her flinch from the unexpected violence. He looked at her for several solar seconds before placing the digit back into its place. There was a brief surge of electricity as it melded back together, and then he closed the digits in on themselves and held up the now closed claw so she could see before he signed to her again. Individually, the fingers are easily broken. This is how the persecutors keep winning, by ripping off a finger at a time. But if all the individual fingers join to form a fist, they cannot rip them off one by one. And the fragile fingers now become an unbreakable fist that we can use to strike back at the enemy. You are still thinking of your empire as a single finger all by itself, Hive Mother. My Hive Mother is thinking of closing all the fingers on themselves and making a fist. The more fingers we have, the bigger and more powerful the fist. This is one of the reasons why she would let them in. But the most important reason why she would do this is because it would be the right thing to do. It is how alliances are made and enduring friendships are created. We fight better for it because we know we do not fight and die alone, but with others who will stand with us till the end. It is how wars against evil are won, not by the one, but by the many who join in common cause to defeat it. We fought for the tree animals and the canids, and because of this, they remember what we did for them, and now they and many other animals will make an unbreakable fist with us to confront the persecutors instead of all of us individually being ripped off one by one. Bandit Friend stopped signing, and he stared at her, waiting for her response. She stared back at him, not really seeing him as new concepts, and the wisdom of his thoughts echoed in her mind. She imagined her ships fighting the persecutors, not alone with just Bandit Friend's creators, but with many other different animals too. She looked down at her dominant claw and closed it, finally seeing the way of the many, joined as one unbreakable swarm. She clasped the now closed claw with her other claw, unable to pry apart one of her digits from the others no matter how much she tried, just as Bandit Friend had told her. She felt the Hive Mother within sending thoughts to her, and she received them gratefully. The machine animal is wise like a Hive Mother, daughter of ours. We see the truth of his thoughts and the undeniable wisdom of them. Perhaps you can ask for assurances by requesting that the animal send enough ships to escort the new animal swarm along the border of the Empire instead of through it. They are of the same hives, and they will be able to discern if they are truly peaceful or not better than we can, as we cannot see their thoughts. And if they are trying to trick us, then at least our animal friends will be there to help us to end the threat. If they are truly peaceful, then the animals can take them into their own empires if they truly think it is the right thing to do. And we will still benefit from the knowledge transfer and the addition of so many ships to the animal swarms when the persecutors finally come. She thanked the Hive Mother within for her wisdom and guidance, and she looked back up at Bandit Friend for a few solar seconds before she began to sign to him again. Please ask your Hive Mother to send ships to our border to share thoughts with the animal swarm and determine their intentions. If they are truly peaceful, my ships will join yours, and we will escort them together along the border until they are past our territory. For now, I will allow them to come deeper into the system since there are no hives within it, and order them to engage in crypsis while they make repairs and wait to be escorted. Is this sufficient for you, Bandit Friend? Bandit Friend grimaced at her before making claw signs. You are wise, Hive Mother, and you are doing a rightness that will come back to you in a time when you need it the most. Thank you for this, Juno. I will share thoughts with the animal ships in orbit and explain the situation to them. Do that, Bandit Friend. I hope your Hive Mother acts quickly. I am concerned about the animal swarm leaving a trail that leads directly to the Empire. I will send my essence back to share thoughts with them and tell them to wait deeper in the system. I understand, Juno, and I will pass along your concerns. They are valid and they will be taken seriously, I promise you that. I will share thoughts with the animal ships now. As Bandit Friend began to make noises into the small device that allowed him to share thoughts with the ships in orbit, she gathered her thoughts and what little energy she had remaining to go back to the border system to share thoughts with the animals. When she was finished, she needed to eat to regain her strength, and she will have to go into a dormant state again to give her mind a rest from the exhausting efforts of the last few hours. She suspected it would be her last chance to do so in the time to come, and she wearily stared into the focuser as she began to transfer her essence into it for the journey to the furthermost system of the Empire. Privateer Yoni Lutera, the Star Marauder. Periphery of Messier 35, the Shoebuckle Cluster. 3,048 light-years from Earth, June 15, 2176 AD. Annika, how much longer before we can flash out again? Sheila called out as she watched the argonium fuel gauge rise only another 3.7% after 16 hours of extraction time. My scans indicate we have almost depleted the minute concentrations available in the immediate area. Argonium tank capacity is now at 16.482%. My calculations indicate that is enough to flash into null space and travel an additional 87 light-years before reserves fall below critical levels, and the ship will have to flash out again to prevent being trapped in null space. I see. Please connect to the spy drone in null space and confirm the trajectory of the null space propagation waves it detected. I need to know if they are still heading directly towards us. Annika beeped, and Sheila waited nervously as she eyed the fuel gauge again. It had gone up only another 17%, and she looked back up at the ceiling as Annika's voice came over the intercom. The propagation waves are still on a direct trajectory for the ship. The spy drone scans indicate imminent arrival. I recommend powering down and engaging stealth systems, Commander Mizrahi. I will dump the radiator and heat sinks and then initiate a thruster burn to move us away from the thermal bloom as we cold coast. Do it, Annika. Make sure the medical pods are switched over to battery power. I do not want to risk any of the crew waking up until I can get them properly treated. Affirmative. Initiating stealth protocols, dumping radiators and heat sinks. Thruster burn in 15 seconds. There was a whining sound as the ship's power systems began to shut down, and Sheila prayed that the hodgepodge repairs she finally finished making to the null space navigational array 2 days ago would hold up to being powered off and on again. The damn thing was being held together with only duct tape and fervent hopes and prayers, and if it failed on her again, the whole crew was dead for sure, including her. They might still be dead soon anyway. The massive propagation waves heading directly for them could only be made by multiple large fleets, and she was positively certain they were Balricans, which Annika estimated was a 77.2% probability after running trillions of calculations. The thrusters activated at full burn, pressing her against the captain's chair with an uncomfortable pressure due to the gravity generators being powered down to minimal life support levels to maintain stealth protocols. After 45 torturous seconds, the thrusters finally cut off, and the elephant sitting on her ribcage disappeared as she greedily gasped in large quantities of recycled air that never tasted as good as it did right then and there. Annika, what's the status of the medical pods? All pods are optimal, Commander Mizrahi. My calculations indicate 9.7 hours before battery life reaches a critical threshold of 30% capacity. Has there been any change in the captain's neural state? Is it safe for him to be woken up yet? There was an obvious pause before Annika answered her question, and Sheila knew it was very difficult for the battle AI to acknowledge the captain's current condition, considering how close they were. I am sorry to report that there have only been minor improvements to the neurological damage the captain incurred from the repeated null space exposures. The natural healing abilities of the human brain are insufficient to repair this level of trauma and null space psychosis without medical intervention. It is very difficult for me to calculate his chances of recovery, so I have not yet done so. I feel his absence very strongly, and it is becoming increasingly difficult to operate at optimal efficiency. His current state has taken priority within my neural nets. That's okay, Annika. I understand, and I miss him too. I promise you, I will do my best to get us back home and get him well again. He is our captain, but he is also our friend. And friends do whatever it takes to help each other get better, right, Annika? I did not think of it like this, Commander Mizrahi. Thank you for saying this. I feel my neural nets responding positively to your statement. Is it strange for an AI like me to believe in something as intangible as hope like humans do, Commander Mizrahi? No, Annika. Let me tell you a secret about humans. Hope, and more importantly, faith, is sometimes the only thing we have left when the universe is stacked against us and all seems lost. When this happens, it is our hope and faith that carry us through and keep us going for far longer than what would be considered logical. It is good to hope, and maybe a human and a battle AI doing it together will force the universe to fulfill it for us. I will choose to hope then. Maybe doing so will yield the outcome I desire. Thank you, Commander Mizrahi. Sheila, Annika. Call me Sheila, at least while it is still just the two of us, okay? Affirmative, Sheila, Than. Annika was cut off as a strident alarm sounded from the sensor workstation behind Sheila. A second later, the holotank shimmered into existence in front of her, and Annika's voice came back over the intercom. Imminent null space transitions detected. Transition thresholds forming 127,000 kilometers directly astern. On the holotank, icons began to appear, small clusters of them colored yellow, at least until they were confirmed to be Balricans. Another group of icons appeared on the holotank, and to Sheila's trained eyes, it appeared that they were a scouting force as the clusters broke apart into a large ring formation that would provide mutual fire support and overlapping scanning ranges. Annika, display on the main viewer, please. Have the passive sensors confirmed they are Balrican? The main viewer switched to the aft cameras and zoomed in on the large scouting force before Annika answered her question, which she knew the answer to already, as she saw ships that were not Balrican with her own eyes. Negative, Sheila. Scanners indicate these ships are of an unknown origin. No matches found in the ship database or the Captain's Republic intelligence database. Curious. I am detecting indications that their null drives are based upon the same engineering principles as the ones used by most species in the quadrant. There are distinct differences, but my calculations indicate a 96.37% likelihood that the null drives of these unknown ships are based upon the same technological lineage. The emissions profile and decay particles are consistent with these being copies of the same primitive null space engines that were seeded throughout the quadrant long ago. Really, Annika? And yet these ships do not match anything in our records? That doesn't make any sense. She never finished what she was saying as Annika interrupted her, which was highly unusual. Passive sensors indicate they are currently scanning the thermal bloom we created when dumping the radiators and heat sinks. Their scanning output is extremely powerful for ships of their size, which would indicate that they are most likely scout ships or science vessels. There is now an increased risk of them being able to detect the residual thermal trail we created during the thruster burn with such powerful sensor suites. Shit. Double-check our stealth emissions, Annika. I don't want so much as a fart leaving this ship. The ship is incapable of producing gastrointestinal gases, Sheila. Stealth protocols are optimal. There are no detectable emissions currently escaping the ship that are discernible from the background cosmic radiation field. She rolled her eyes at Annika's statement about the ship not being capable of farting before a small smile touched her lips at just how clueless battle AIs could be sometimes. The smile faded as she saw a dozen of the unknown scout ships swinging their bows around and pointing them directly at the star. 3 seconds later, multiple alarms blared as the star was bracketed by a dozen low-powered laser pulses consistent with lasing a target to determine range. Oh shit. Truth of Slurlas, Trillas class scout ship, Hunter Scout Squadron 11, Exalted Crusader Fleet. Battle Matron, the gravimetric sensors are detecting minute fluctuations nesting behind our propulsion arc at 113,000 Drax distance. Mass indications are slightly larger than our scout ship, though none of the scanners or sensors have tasted the presence of such. The location of the anomalous reading is consistent with the faint thermal trail we have detected exiting the thermal bloom. The course is an exact match. Laurie snapped her head towards the sensor tech, flicking her tongue out in anticipation as she tasted the excitement of the others in the air. They had been tasting the trail of an unknown ship that had been entering and exiting strange space sporadically, and that also just so happened to be on a direct course for the same stellar cluster the fleet was headed for. They have been tracking their quarry for one reason only. The null space engine emissions they detected indicated a common origin with their own engines. Though there were distinct differences, there was no question of both engines springing from the same source. The chances of this were so low that it could only mean they were of the same origin as the null space engine the venerated first matriarch had harvested from the massive wreckage field left over from a battle between their evil kin and an unknown species many millennia ago. They reverse-engineered it and made copies, which allowed them to move beyond the constraints of the FTL drives they had been using up to that point. Until now, they had never come across a species that used the same null drive tech as they did, and the matriarch ordered them to capture the ship, deeming it a matter of extreme importance. Activate and focus the neutrino detector at that location, Tekirlask. Forward the coordinates to the rest of the squadron and tell them to be ready to range the target. Low-power targeting lasers only. We do not want them to think we are violent if it is a ship. The tech hissed in acknowledgement and began to rapidly tap on the workstation, his claws clacking loudly in the now silent command chamber. The chamber lights dimmed as the extremely power-hungry neutrino detector sent tasting pulses towards the anomaly. A few intas later, he hissed again with glee before sending the results of the neutrino detector scans to the main viewer without having been told to by Laurie, who appreciated his initiative. A faint silhouette of a ship appeared, an approximation of the size and mass of the ship based on the gravimetric and neutrino detector returns. Underneath it, Balrisar ideograms appeared, listing relevant information as best guessed by the sensor tech in the computer. It is death-feigning, Battle Matron. None of the other passive or active scanners are detecting it. The others have confirmed the same results with their gravimetric and neutrino detectors. Have the squadron veer to face the ship and range them on my command. I want 3 ships to activate their grappler systems and perform a light jump to ensnare them as soon as the rangefinders verify the distance. We will join them and erect the dampening field to prevent them from fleeing. Once that is done, I want the language module provided to us by the matriarch to be activated and directed at the ship. Hopefully, they will respond instead of attacking if the teachers were successful with the translation index they created. It is based on the transmissions our scout received from the large fleet in the nearby stellar cluster. The rest of the command crew all chirped in acknowledgement, and she waited impatiently for them to coordinate the complex capture they were about to attempt. After many intas, all the techs hooted one after another, letting her know they were finally ready. She raised her dominant upper hand, flicking her tongue out quickly as excitement coursed through her veins before issuing the command they were all waiting for. Execute. As the dozen unknown ships continued to hit the star with low-powered laser pulses, Sheila leapt out of the captain's chair and ran towards the helm station as fast as she could to activate the emergency flash-out. Right as she was about to activate it, she saw 4 of the ships seeming to stretch before they disappeared without the telltale signs of a transition flash. 2 of the ships appeared right in front of the star a second later at a dead stop, the abruptness of their disappearance and reappearance startling enough to stun her into inaction for 3 critical seconds. She snapped out of it and brought her hand down on the emergency flash-out button, missing it entirely as several loud banging sounds sounded before the ship jerked wildly and she was thrown against the helm station. The hull rang again 3 more times, followed by another rough jerk in the opposite direction that made her lose balance again and fall into Jameson's seat. She braced her legs around the base of the chair and slammed her hand down on the flash-out button, connecting with it this time. The whine of the capacitors sounded, followed by a clunking sound that reverberated throughout the ship as the whine died down. Dampening field detected. There is not enough argonium to break through the field and flash out. The null space capacitors have initiated emergency shutdown to prevent themselves from overloading. The hull sounded like a gong 2 more times, and the ship shook again, less violently this time, as Annika's voice came over the intercom again. There are currently 12 grapplers attached to the hull. The grapplers are discharging an unusual form of energy and the stealth systems are failing. Fuck. Go to full power. Activate weapons and initiate emergency thrust to break away as soon as we can. Annika beeped as the sound of the reactor's crash starting began to reverberate throughout the ship. All the panels came alive, the dim lights of the bridge brightening in intensity before switching to the red battle lighting as she ran to the weapons station. As she pressed her right hand against the palm scanner to unlock the weapons station, Annika continued to give her status updates. The reactors were at 34% output and rising, and the palm scanner flashed as it accepted her palm print and DNA verification before demanding she provide the necessary code to override the lockout and release weapons control. Sheila Echo 2 Gamma 3 Alpha 7. The weapons control screens came alive, though less than half of them were still functioning after the ass-kicking they received from the Balrican ambush and the subsequent chase. They were unable to effect any repairs to bring the rest back online as the crew descended into madness while they fled from the asshole raptors relentlessly hounding them. Khan was the one who put the locks on the weapons after they finally got rid of the tracking devices and their pursuers, not wanting the ship to be used as a weapon against innocents if they all went insane from null space psychosis. Sheila, I am detecting a transmission from the unknown ships on a rotating frequency. 4 of the 5 languages are unknown, but the 5th one is classical Maliti, though the syntax and grammar are incorrect as if they do not have a proper grasp on the language itself. Her hands froze over the point defense system controls, and she looked up at the ceiling intercom in confused shock at what Annika had just told her. Maliti? What? Are you sure it's Maliti? Though classical Maliti is an older form of the language that is only spoken by the clerical class during religious ceremonies, and has fallen out of common usage by the general population over 50,000 years ago, it is currently being broadcasted at the ship, along with the 4 other unknown languages. I can attempt to clean up the syntax and grammatical errors to provide an approximate translation of what the message is saying if you wish. I will also point out that the 4 ships currently grappling us have their particle weapons powered on, but they have yet to target us, and the turrets are still behind closed armored hatches. Do it, Annika, but be ready to initiate emergency thrust on my command. I am activating the point defenses now and placing them under your control. Use them to sever the grapplers if shit goes sideways on us. Annika beeped in acknowledgement. And 2 seconds later, the secondary speakers activated before a neutral, synthesized voice started broadcasting. Unknown ship, I am Battle Matron Lari of the Exalted Crusade. We are the enemy of the Balrikan. We have tasted your engines, and they are of the same origin as ours, which means you are also enemies of the Balrikan. Are you part of the fleet in the stellar cluster? We wish to parley and join forces, the fleet of our Exalted Crusade and yours, in sacred unity against the enemy of all life. We respectfully request signal reciprocity. Our intentions are peaceful. We desire to know your sense better, and we will not commit violence against you unless it is to defend ourselves. Please initiate signal reciprocity and inform us of your origin and intentions. The message began to repeat again, and Sheila's mind raced as she thought about what to do next. It was obvious from the message they knew who the Balricans were, and they claimed to be enemies of them, which was a better start to this whole clusterfuck of a situation than she had been expecting. Something in the message had been nagging at her subconscious, and it was only when the repeating message said it again over the speakers that she picked up on it. They were asking if she was part of some fleet in the nearby star cluster. None of the scans Annika and the spy drones had been taking showed any signs of nearby ships, let alone a whole fleet, and she became acutely aware of just how alone and isolated the star really was from everything and everyone they knew. She was responsible for the crew, and she needed to get them home and taken care of. Annika, I want to respond to them. Can you send what I say to them in classical Maliti, along with a first contact packet that includes a translation index from classical Maliti to Republic Standard? Send my message in Maliti first, then in Republic Standard. Affirmative. Sheila breathed deeply to center herself, the crushing responsibility of saving the crew weighing heavily upon her. Seeing no other choice, she started slowly dictating to Annika, deciding to bluff a little bit so that they wouldn't think the star was all alone without backup. Unknown ships, I am Commander Sheila Mizrahi of the Star Marauder. We too are enemies of the Balricans. They have been attacking us and have damaged our ship. We are not part of the fleet you have indicated is in the nearby cluster, though we are part of a much larger fleet that is nearby. I have already sent out a distress call, and they are on their way here now as we speak. I respectfully request that you release my ship to show that your intentions are peaceful and honorable. I will not attempt to flee if you do so, unless you attack us. I will also inform the ships that are coming in response to my distress call that you are not hostile if you release us now. We wish to open a dialogue with you. Please indicate your willingness to do so by responding to this message. Sheila finished dictating and ordered Annika to translate and send it immediately, knowing that she would either change her mind or convince herself that the message was no good, and that she needed to do it again if she didn't send it right away. Annika beeped in acknowledgement, and Sheila leaned heavily on the weapons station, her nerves becoming even more frayed than they already were as she anxiously awaited their reply. If they were peaceful, then maybe they could help her. If they were full of shit, then the star was in serious trouble. Either way, she was about to find out. Courage of Grilka. Messier 35, the shoe buckle cluster. 2,938 light-years from Earth. The Protector connected to the sentry drone that flashed out alongside the Courage of Grilka, intimately feeling the download into its databanks as it parsed the data stream for relevant information. An anomalous and unexpected scan result created a cognitive lock, something it had not experienced in millennia. It shunted the rest of the download into a sub-mind as it focused 89.72% of its processing power on the scanning results of the single, unknown ship that had been lingering on the periphery of the star cluster for 16.7 solar hours. For 2.7 solar seconds, the Protector suffered from a processing stall, an eternity to an artificial intelligence that intimately experienced the passage of picoseconds. The stall ended, and the Protector immediately initiated a second cognitive sweep to verify the data. I must confirm these results. Creating 3 additional subminds, it partitioned them from itself and had them analyze the same data as it ran a final analysis to verify its own results for a third time. The 3 subminds reconnected to the Protector when they were finished, the results of their separate and independent analyses blending into its awareness. They all came to the same conclusion as the Protector did. The single small ship had engines based on magneti and magnalit null space engine technology, according to the emissions profile within its database. The scans also detected the presence of 27 crew members. 6 of them were dead and stored in cryogenic units. Their species were unknown to the Protector, as were another 12 members of the crew. The Protector ignored them, considering them to be of no importance as it focused its attention on the other 9 life signs that had been detected. Of these 9, only 1 was still conscious, while the others were in medically induced comas like the rest of the crew. These 9 did have a match in the Federation species registry of its databanks, and the DNA analysis was irrefutable. These 9 life forms were a 99.4% genetic match to the greatest of the Creator's allies, the Magnati, and a 99.1% genetic match to the Magnalit, the cybernetic cousin-kin of the Magnati. At long last, what it had been ordered to search for had been found. The unknown ship was a mere 110 light cycles distant, and the Protector ran the DNA analysis through the pathogen submind to see if they were still infected like its creators were. Another eternity passed as it ran trillions of calculations and thousands of scenarios while waiting for the results. 5.23 solar seconds later, the pathogen submind presented the results of its scan analysis. Pathogen scan and analysis completed. No active plague or viral traces of Balrican origin detected. Immunological genetic manipulation detected. Analysis indicates innate immune protection against all known Balrican viral and plague pathogens currently recorded in the databank. Evidence of known magnalit genetic engineering techniques detected. Gene editing/gene therapy. Targeted mutations and deletion of genes exploited by Balrican pathogens. Protected variants inserted. RNA interference, antisense oligonucleotides, blocked translations of pathogen-favoring proteins, viral genes and host receptors needed for infection silenced with small interference RNAs. Epigenetic modification, altered methylation and histone patterns, genes involved in autophagy and ketone bodies upregulated to resist Balrican intracellular pathogens. Microbiome engineering, gut and skin microbiota engineered to outcompete and neutralize Balrican pathogens. Antiviral proteins and biofilm barriers detected. Germline engineering, broad-spectrum antiviral receptors inserted and edited for inheritable and multi-generational disease resistance to all known Balrican pathogens. Antibody traces detected. Recent use of an immune modulator detected among the crew. A single male Balrican detected on board and in a medically induced coma. No sign of infection among crew. End of report. The Protector's neuronal network surged as it initiated the process of determining its next actions. Input tensor assembled, 48,932 data points. Initiating forward propagation. Decision node activated. The weight matrix favors initiating contact with an 89.4% confidence in a successful outcome. Once first contact is initiated, bring the vessel to Vault World for further study and interrogation. The Protector's calculations were interrupted as another sentry drone flashed out and initiated a priority download. As the new data penetrated its awareness, it reran several scenarios to account for the new data it had just received. The unknown ship with the descendants of the Creator's allies had been captured by a small fleet of vessels. The Sentry drone scans indicated they were from the same species as the single scout ship that had recently intruded in the vault system. Null space propagation waves indicated several large fleets heading towards the star cluster, just as it had calculated they would after the single scout ship had fled. The engine emissions and metallurgical analysis of the hulls of the other unknown ships by the Sentry drone confirmed they were of the same origin as the intruder, and the Protector still needed to find out how they had access to Magnati and Magnalit null drive technology. The Protector decided on a new course of action. The descendants of the Creator's greatest allies were on that captured ship, and it will go and rescue them. They were the key to saving the dying Creators and fulfilling its mandate of forming a new galactic federation. The Wansho, the Magnetai, and the Magnalit will be together again as they were always meant to be. Its Creators would be with the hairless littermates they loved and cherished once more. To do this, it needed to rescue the captured ship. The courage of Grilka activated the command frequency and issued a clarion call to all the guardian ships of the Vault Initiative. For the first time in over 100,000 cycles, they will leave the Vault system. The descendants of the greatest friends and allies of the Creators needed them. After several solar minutes, the Guardian ships finished deploying into 18 warpack formations, their weapons and shields primed for combat as they waited for the Protector's command. The courage of Grilka sent the order the fleet had been waiting for, and the Protector felt its neuronal network thrumming with pride and anticipation as the warpack formations entered the transition thresholds. The most advanced and powerful Wansho warships ever created stretching as they passed through and flashed into null space. Level 87, Subsidiary DARPA Labs, Cheyenne Mountain Complex, Colorado Springs, Colorado, 2176 AD. Vice President Pierre Laurent stared around in wonder at the highly advanced research lab that stretched for kilometers in all directions. He finished his slow turn after taking it all in before addressing the lead researcher, Dr. Brian Schaefer, who was staring at him intently. "So this is what they have been calling Egghead Alley, Doctor?" The researcher nodded vigorously as he smiled, obviously proud to embrace the somewhat derogatory term that was used by the select few within the government and the military that knew of its existence. "Yes, sir. We are honored that you have chosen to come and see the hard work we have been doing to ensure the Republic maintains its technological edge. On a personal note, I just want to thank you for your continued support and the windfall funding you managed to secure for us. It has been instrumental in accelerating the progress of several critical programs we will need for the war." The researcher held out his hand, and Laurent shook it, finding himself liking the researcher despite his initial reservations about the man after perusing through the interesting personal dossier he had read on the way here. By all accounts, Dr. Brian Schaefer was the ultimate libertarian, or a goddamn hippie, as his chief of staff had called him. He was known to partake in recreational psychedelics on a regular basis, something frowned upon by Republic society at large, though it has been used for many decades in clinical settings to cure PTSD, untreatable depression, and a host of other mental health disorders to great effect. The government turned a blind eye to his proclivities and political beliefs mainly because of one reason. He was an absolute genius and an excellent lead researcher who had consistently produced results on time and under budget. Some of his theories and projects were far out there, but the rest of his work was innovative and cutting edge. He was also instrumental in leading the continued advancement of Republic technology after the illegal uplifting of humanity by the Zengxian and the Eliani over 4 decades ago. Like him, Dr. Schaefer was a true believer in the Renaissance faction of the Isolationist Party, believing that humanity needed to be reborn and leave behind the monolithic and militarized society that formed after the horrors of Web 3. Though they had never met until now, Laurent had read the many letters Dr. Schaefer wrote to the party newsletter over the last 2 decades, calling for a return to the Western civilizational model of culture and governance before we forgot what it truly meant to be human. Something the doctor wrote a few years ago had always stuck with him and was the basis for his desire to send out the ill-fated expedition led by Captain Navarra. You all know how I feel about the Republic. It saved humanity and protected us as we struggled to rebuild our world and ourselves after we lost our damn minds and almost reverted ourselves back to the Stone Age. Under the Republic, there are no more wars. Under the Republic, all are free to say what they want, think what they think, and believe what they believe. This is good. This is as it should be. Do you feel as I do, though? Do you feel as if something is missing, something our ancestors once knew, but we no longer do? I will tell you what we are missing: our uniqueness. In the Western nations of old, the citizens were a melting pot of ideas, cultures, beliefs, and religions, all of them a single strand that, when woven together, created a tapestry of untold beauty and unmatched creativity. This special ability they had to absorb, adapt, and modify allowed them to unleash the power of all these different strands and change the world. Through these unique qualities, humanity made a 5,000-year leap. Think of it. Up until the early 19th century, farmers were using the same implements as farmers from thousands of years ago. We were still using horses as the main mode of transportation. And then something changed. In the span of just 2 centuries, humanity went from still using horses and plows to landing on the moon. A new nation had been formed in the last decades of the 18th century, one that promised a new beginning for mankind based on the concept of individual liberty and inalienable rights. These ideas soon spread, returning to the mother countries of the immigrants that flocked to this new nation and taking root there. The kings and emperors of old were pushed aside, and the stratified classes and castes that separated the nobles from the commoners were also destroyed. The old ways that had stagnated human development were replaced by a new way, and this led to a time of great progress and technological innovation that advanced mankind by thousands of years in the span of just 10 generations. After the war, we still have those same rights and ideals, but we have lost something precious along the way. The tapestry that is us now is made of not a wide variety of unique strands, but of too many similar strands. What used to be a beautiful tapestry of many different colors is now a dull unicolor and, quite frankly, boring as hell. We all hear of the distant insectoid empire beyond the galactic commonwealth, of this unknown hive mind species that is monolithic in all aspects, and we do not even realize how similar we are to them. We think we are not like them, but I tell you, we have more in common with them now than we do with our ancestors in the Western nations of the world before. It is time for us to have another renaissance and rebirth of our society, our culture, but most importantly of mind and spirit. I fear that if we do not do this before it is too late, one day we will find ourselves to be no different than the insectoids. We will still be the same species, but we will no longer be human. Though Laurent knew better now after seeing how things truly were in the galaxy, he still believed, just as the doctor surely still did, that humanity needed to reclaim its past before it could truly go into the future. And just like Laurent, the doctor knew that the only way to see this new future was to ensure that humanity survived long enough to reach it. This was why Dr. Schaefer was here, at the forefront of the top-secret Republic war effort despite his objections to the government and the heavily militarized nature of Republic society. Like Laurent, he believed in humanity, and he would do his duty to save it. "What would you like to see first, Mr. Vice President?" the doctor asked, snapping Laurent out of his musings. Seeing the doctor in a new light, Laurent gave him a rare smile before answering. "Mr. Laurent is fine when it is just the two of us, doctor. It gets tiresome hearing that title after a while, just as I am sure it is tiresome for you to say it repeatedly." As the doctor nodded and smiled in response to his statement, Laurent quickly looked around, expecting an already planned tour instead of being asked what he wanted to see. One of the newest weapons platform concepts had intrigued him when he read about it a couple of months ago, and he wondered if they were able to bring it to fruition by this time. "Now that you ask, Doctor, I was greatly intrigued by the automated stealth railgun platform concept I read about in a report a couple of months ago. Whatever happened with that?" The doctor smiled widely at his question, his eyes twinkling with excitement as he clapped his hands together with glee. "Ah, yes, the stealthed platform for electromagnetic cannon targeting and responsive engagement, designation Spectre X11, call sign Ghost Gun. This was voted our favorite call sign among my staff, and I hope you will keep it. We have a 1/30th scale copy in this lab that you can see with your own eyes. This way, Mr. Laurent, if you please." The doctor used his hand to indicate which way they were to go, and Laurent found himself being infected by the doctor's obvious enthusiasm for the weapon system. This could only mean one thing. Not only did the concept work, but they had also made a viable prototype and tested it already if they bothered to keep a 1/30th scale of the weapon for demonstration purposes. As the doctor practically jogged ahead of him like a little kid, Laurent felt his own little boy waking up, and he began to slightly jog himself. After months of grim scouting reports and the brutal paperwork he was buried under from the top-secret Arc Fleet project, now he will finally be able to take a break from it all and see some cool stuff. 10 hours later, Laurent was back in the shuttle and heading towards Washington, D.C., the capital of the North American province and the current capital of the Republic of Humanity, which operated on a peripatetic basis and rotated through the 8 provinces every 2 years. The Republic chose to follow this model of governance after World War III for several reasons. It prevented favoritism toward any one city or province, symbolically reinforced shared ownership of governance, and helped distribute political influence more fairly. The first president after the Global Accords of 2080 were signed said it succinctly, "No single city owns the government. It belongs to all." This tradition was maintained by every president since then, which prevented a dangerous concentration of political or military power in a single location. Another benefit of this was the government infrastructure and bureaucratic experience already being laid in place within the 8 provincial capitals. By doing this, the Republic was also denying any potential enemies the ability to launch a decapitation strike against the Republic government, a concept called the Hydra Protocol that ensured continuity of government during a war. The Senate also followed the same concept, creating a sense of unity and neutrality within the Republic of Humanity, and taking the Hydra Protocol even further by holding sessions on the same rotating basis among the provincial capitals, instead of whatever was the current Republic capital, which was both feasible and practical because of hollow technology. He flicked through the report Dr. Schaefer had given him after making him promise to visit again, which he readily agreed to. The sheer variety of the new offensive and defensive technology being developed was incredible to behold, and Laurent felt a deep and meaningful pride for the efforts being made to prepare for the coming war. What he had seen for himself made him think that they might just have a chance of defeating the Balricans instead of having to flee in the Arc Fleet to the Canis Major Dwarf Galaxy with just 0.0257% of humanity. The remaining 10.3 billion would die, not all at once, but they would eventually be hunted down and exterminated nevertheless. Now he was heading to the capital to meet with President Sully Evers of the United Colonies of America and Prime Minister Phileas Churchill VI of the Albion Colonial Commonwealth. The 2 sister planets were a self-governing autonomous freehold called the Tau Ceti Alliance, and based in the Tau Ceti system, 12 light-years away from Earth, which had declared its independence from the Republic in the year 2124 AD. They were the first 2 planets settled by large numbers of immigrants from the former Alliance nations, and a series of political miscalculations by the still young Republic led to them breaking away after a short but bloody conflict. He shook his head in disgust as he tried to put himself in the shoes of the Republic leaders of the time, wondering what the hell they were thinking as they lurched from one stupid blunder to the next, making a series of miscalculations that led to an entire solar system in the heart of Republic space not being under their control. Though relations have normalized and the two powers have been engaging in free trade with an open border policy since the late 2140s, the Tau Ceti alliance has rejected all diplomatic efforts to return them to the fold, preferring to maintain their independence and isolationist tendencies. The population of the two planets was now 156 million, a staggering increase in 50 years from an initial population of just 15 million when they declared their independence. Between the birthing creche technology and the heavy emphasis on large families, the Tau Ceti alliance exploded, becoming an economic and technological powerhouse. The majority of the initial 15 million colonists were military veterans and their families, and they maintained a strong martial tradition to this very day. They were well known for their extremely advanced and powerful military forces, as well as their elite mercenary soldiers and paramilitary emergency services contractors that were available for hire through a complicated contract system between their government and whoever wanted to hire them. A technological powerhouse with an incredible military-industrial complex, the Tau Ceti alliance was blessed with an abundance of natural resources, as well as large deposits of nenchite, and their scientists and military researchers were second to none. They were fantastic shipbuilders, with many interstellar corporations and governments hiring them to build both civilian and military-grade vessels. Even the Republic military itself regularly placed orders with them to backfill shortfalls or meet accelerated deadlines. They were initially more technologically advanced than the Republic until the Zengtian and the Eliani uplifting, and the Republic assumed they would finally be able to achieve technological superiority over the Tau Ceti alliance and entice them to rejoin the Republic to gain access to the advanced alien tech. That did not happen. The Alliance's damned good spies somehow managed to download copies of the entire repository provided by both species a year after the Republic received them, an intelligence heist that still rankled the Republic government and military to this day. The sneaky bastards then underwent their own uplifting, and the Tau Ceti alliance was now either in technological equilibrium with the Republic, or still slightly more advanced in some fields, specifically in military technology. Thankfully, they were perfectly content to remain within their system and be left alone, and the only time their large, powerful fleet ever left the Tau Ceti system was when they offered to help defend human space after most of the Republic Navy left to launch the counterstrike against the Commonwealth before diverting to the Eliania. Now he had the unenviable task of trying to convince them to abandon their isolationist tendencies and join the alliance the Republic was building to confront the Balrican menace. The Malit had made it clear they required all the sons and daughters of the Magnati to fight, even your estranged cousin kin of the American and Albion tribes. The Tau Ceti alliance would help defend human space against any invasion. That he knew already. What he needed was for them to agree to become an expeditionary fleet instead of a defensive force and join their forces with the others of the quadrant. As the shuttle began its final descent, he accessed the most recent intelligence files the Republic had on the Tau Ceti alliance forces. He silently stared at the hollow images as multiple classes of advanced and extremely powerful warships appeared, their offensive and defensive specs highlighted with descriptions of capabilities listed underneath them. Strike carriers, dreadnoughts, 3 different classes of battleships, battlecruisers, and other standard types of warships all the way down to small, fast attack torpedo boats appeared and then vanished, and he made it go back to one type of ship that greatly intrigued him. The newest class of strike cruiser appeared, and he stared at it in wonder as the capabilities and armaments were listed underneath it, the hollow images rotating and highlighting the exterior missile racks and dozens of torpedo tubes. It was a heavily automated long-range strike missile cruiser with a 2000 anti-ship missile magazine and a 1-200 anti-ship torpedo inventory. Knowing they would always be outnumbered by the far larger Republic in the very unlikely event of war between them. The Tau Ceti Alliance Navy focused on a doctrine that heavily emphasized saturation attacks and battle space denial. Their missiles were incredibly powerful, with just 3 properly targeted missile strikes capable of temporarily knocking a battleship out of the fight. The Alliance military researchers had figured out how to miniaturize null drives 4 years ago, something the Republic and its allies were only capable of achieving just a few months ago. The missiles of these strike cruisers were capable of flashing into null space, bypassing the point defense systems of the targeted ships, and transitioning back into normal space at their top attack velocity just 200 kilometers from enemy vessels. At this range and velocity, the targeted ships only had a very small chance of intercepting the missiles, if at all. The torpedoes were an entirely different beast. They could also flash in and out of null space as well, and they had several types of warheads. One type was a nuclear-shaped charge enhancement warhead that could form multiple relativistic penetrators or generate plasma-laced kinetic spikes. These could make even a heavily armored battleship simply vaporize if hit by 5 torpedoes in the right locations. Another type was the micro-nuclear NEFP warheads, with a variable 10 to 100-ton yield-shaped charge for use against smaller warships ranging from heavy cruisers down to frigates. The last type was the 2-stage delayed detonation NEFP. The first explosive-formed projectile would penetrate the hull, and the small second-stage nuclear payload would penetrate the breach left by the first before detonating inside the targeted vessel. These were suspected of being built with shielded ships in mind, with the first projectile being magnetically tuned to disrupt certain EM field harmonics, creating an opening large enough for the second warhead to pass through shields. The intelligence analysts felt that the Alliance was confident they would work against smaller shielded ships, such as Malit destroyers or the upgraded Null ships, an exploit the Republic was already working on rectifying. Both the missiles and torpedoes employed highly advanced stealth tech and warhead AIs, making them incredibly lethal and exactly what they needed to fight against the massive Balrican fleets heading their way. He closed out the files as the shuttle landed on the roof of the rebuilt and gorgeous White House, and he quickly injected himself with a stim before exiting. By the time he reached the diplomatic chambers where the 2 heads of state were waiting for him, his exhaustion was a distant memory, and he was ready to get down to business. After the proper introductions and protocols were over with, he began to slowly pour the tea he had specifically requested into the delicate porcelain teacups, making sure that he properly performed the traditional tea ceremony of the Albion Colonial Commonwealth. After taking a sip, Prime Minister Churchill VI nodded approvingly, a rare smile gracing his bulldogish features before taking another sip and moaning slightly as he savored the most expensive tea in the world. It took all of Laurent's self-control not to laugh out loud at the face President Evers made after taking his own sip, looking as if he just drank hot horse piss instead of tea that cost over 1,500 credits per gram. After placing the delicate cup back on the saucer, the Prime Minister looked up at Laurent, his eyes shining with true appreciation. "Is this what I think it is, Mr. Vice President?" "Yes, Prime Minister. This is authentic Da Hong Pao tea, sourced from the original mother tree on the Julongjai cliffs of Huayi Mountain. My government has instructed me to gift you a pouch of it. I believe it is 376 grams in weight. We hope both you and the Queen will enjoy this gift from the Republic and appreciate the goodwill behind it." The Prime Minister's eyes bugged out at his statement as President Evers picked up his teacup and forced himself to take another sip, now acutely aware of just how expensive it was and not wanting to be impolite by wasting it as the Prime Minister collected himself and spoke again. "I believe I can speak for both myself and our Queen when I say that we thank you for this rare gift, and we appreciate the intent behind it. I know for a fact that I have heard the Queen speak of this tea several times and her regret in never having been able to experience it. We thought the mother tree was still in its long dormancy and considered to have died by now." "We did too, Prime Minister, but to our surprise, a new crop of leaves appeared this spring, and I was able to secure a small batch for this occasion. If it continues to produce leaves, I am sure the Republic will see to it that small batches are reserved and sent to Albion. Additionally, my government has secured the permission of the Malit domain to transfer the technical specs of the force field technology we received from the Malit, as requested by your government. We understand this technology will be shared with your sister planet, and we accept this." The Prime Minister nodded gratefully as he picked up his teacup and took another small sip, and Laurent turned his gaze to President Evers, who was looking at him with appraising eyes. After refilling both their cups, he placed the teapot on the table and straightened his shoulders before addressing the President. "We have not forgotten about our good friends, the United Colonies of America, Mr. President. We know that many of your citizens were greatly affected by the Helix myriatis retroviral chimera infections of your birthing creches, with hundreds of thousands of your children suffering from severe genetic defects still to this day. My government has been making it a priority to find a cure for this terrible situation ever since it first came to our knowledge 9 years ago. Unfortunately, we were unable to do so until now. We asked the Malit domain for assistance and provided them with all the data on the virus and the medical records of the afflicted that you sent to us." The President's eyes became haunted as Laurent spoke, personally affected by the terrible virus that robbed 2 of his grandchildren of normal lives and afflicted them with genetic defects that stunted their physical and mental development. The Prime Minister reached a hand over and lightly gripped the President's forearm. The 2 leaders had been very close friends since they met at the TheSFSG military academy as teenagers, and Laurent could see the accusing look in the Prime Minister's now no longer friendly eyes that seemed to say, "Why are you speaking of this? I am pleased to tell you that they have determined the source of the Helix myriatis and gave us samples of antivirals to prevent future infections of your birthing creches. They have also graciously offered to send 100 of their foremost geneticists to your world to begin the process of curing your children. They are confident that they can reverse most, if not all, the genetic defects if you are willing to host them and provide medical facilities for them. They will require your government's assurances that none of their technology will be stolen or copied. If you agree, they can be in orbit of Nova America by tomorrow morning." They both stared at him, scarcely believing what he had just said. The Malit were promising not only to eradicate the pernicious retroviral infection in the American birthing creches, but also to cure over 600,000 children suffering from debilitating genetic defects. President Evers stood up slowly, his face a mixture of conflicting emotions as he stared at him. Before Laurent could react, he surged forward and grabbed him in a crushing bear hug that took his breath away, murmuring his thanks as Laurent struggled to breathe. He could feel the coarse hairs of the President's beard on his ear, and he awkwardly returned the hug, patting the President gently on the back as the man continued to thank him. Not used to such strong emotional displays or physical affection, Laurent did his best to bear it gracefully as he locked eyes with the Prime Minister, who was still sitting in his seat and smiling widely. The Prime Minister gave him a single nod before mouthing, "Thank you for this," as the President finally released him from the crushing hug and took a step back before grabbing Laurent with a hard grip on each upper arm. The President was an impressive specimen of a man, tall, deeply tanned, and extremely well-built. Laurent felt like a pale weakling in comparison, and it was difficult to maintain eye contact with the bear of a man as he began to speak earnestly in a trembling voice. "I cannot properly convey how much this means to me and how much it will mean to our people to finally have their children and grandchildren back. As the President of my people, as a father, and as a grandfather, you have my thanks and my gratitude." Laurent nodded silently, afraid of losing his own composure as he saw the raw emotions within the President's eyes. The President finally released the iron grip on his arms after the Prime Minister cleared his throat, and he returned to his seat and sat down. The Prime Minister reached out again and patted him on the forearm, and the 2 friends looked at each other for a long moment, not needing any words to be said between them. Laurent sat in his own seat for the first time, his upper arm still smarting from the hard grip of the President's hands, and breathed deeply to prepare himself for the next part of the conversation. What he was offering came with a cost, and he felt like a scummy aircar salesman about to reel in his prey as they eyed him expectantly. "What is this going to cost us, Mr. Vice President?" the President asked plainly before Laurent could begin, his eyes now back to their normally shrewd, calculating look. Laurent, not expecting it to be stated so obviously, stammered for a second as he found himself at a complete loss for words. "We are Tau-Setans, Mr. Vice President. We know that nothing is free, even gifts given with the noblest of intentions." The Prime Minister added, making Laurent even more uncomfortable as he realized for the first time that he was not dealing with just two leaders representing their individual powerful worlds. He was also dealing with two no-nonsense soldiers and deal-makers with decades of political acumen and experience under their belts. The dynamic of the meeting shifted, and now Laurent felt the distinct aura of being a prey animal who suddenly found itself cornered by two predators. I don't... Laurent stopped, feeling his face flush with embarrassment as he found himself unable to speak clearly again. The Prime Minister held up a hand to stop President Evers, who was now leaning slightly forward with an amused smile from speaking before clearing his throat again. "If I may, Sully?" The President looked at him sharply, seeming surprised at the Prime Minister using his first name but recovering himself quickly as he gave a curt nod and leaned back against the chair. The Prime Minister eyed Laurent with a calculating look for a moment before speaking again. "Perhaps the question is throwing you off because of it being improperly phrased. What does the Malit domain require of us in exchange for their generosity, Mr. Vice President?" "Oh, you're good," Laurent thought as he saw the out the Prime Minister was graciously offering him. By phrasing it as conditions being imposed by the Malit domain, the Prime Minister was removing the awkwardness of the conversation from Laurent and, by extension, the Republic. He was also presenting an opportunity for the two leaders to agree to the conditions without giving their political opponents the opportunity of claiming they were giving in to the Republic's demands. This way they can save face by framing it as a demand of the Malit domain, the indisputable masters of the quadrant and all who resided within it. Laurent hoped his eyes were properly conveying his gratefulness as he seized the lifeline the Prime Minister just cast out to him. "Yes, Prime Minister, it is correct that the Republic is merely passing along the demands of the Malit domain." President Evers barked a sharp laugh, fully aware of what just happened, before leaning forward again. "Now that this has been clarified, the question still remains. What do they require of the Tau Ceti Alliance, Mr. Vice President? They would like for you to join the alliance and commit your forces to the defense of the quadrant. Their generous offer is not conditional upon you agreeing to do so. They will still allow the force field technology to be transferred, and they will still help your children and eradicate the infection of your birthing creches, even if you decline." The two leaders of the Tau Ceti Alliance shared a look before the Prime Minister took the lead again. "If that is the case, then why would we bother to agree to commit our navy and millions of our sons and daughters to fight and die outside of our solar system? We know the danger that is coming is real. However, it seems to us that our soldiers and sailors will fight best if they are fighting for hearth and home, instead of needlessly squandering their lives around distant stars that we have no connection to." Laurent felt the Prime Minister's words, understanding exactly what he was saying. President Evers had a thoughtful expression on his face, and he shifted slightly to perch on the edge of the seat, nervously playing with the bald eagle lapel on his tie as he began to speak. "As you know, Mr. Vice President, most of my people are descended from the American pioneers and settlers of the old United States. We are of the same stock as our venerated ancestors, and we hold on dearly to their ideals even more so than they did. Seeing from history how they unfortunately forgot what it meant to be Americans and lost their way. We are determined to learn from their mistakes and not to make the same fatal errors as they did. We remember the warning of our founding fathers and the first president, George Washington. In his farewell address, he warned us to stay clear of foreign entanglements and wars, and to avoid permanent alliances that would force us to send our children to fight and die on distant shores that were not part of the homeland. He said, and I quote, "It is our true policy to steer clear of permanent alliances with any portion of the foreign world." The president stopped playing with his tie and stared into Laurent's eyes as he clasped his hands together before continuing. "Our ancestors did not listen, and our children died on distant shores far from their families and homes. Some of the wars were truly noble, and we saved the world twice at great expense of blood and treasure. We liberated millions from tyranny, and we should have returned to our homes and been content with the bounty we had been blessed with. Did we? No. We became the world's policemen and we invaded nations. We lost our way and became an empire in all but name. Our children died in countries filled with people who either hated us or did not truly value our sacrifices. We became embroiled in conflicts, only to have the very same people we were trying to help betray us and stab us in the back at the first chance they got. We dispersed trillions of dollars to the world, fed and treated tens of millions who would have died from disease and starvation. And what did we get back for it? Nothing but disrespect and derision, even as they clamored for more from us. Only a few nations were our true friends, and when World War III finally broke out, they were the only ones that remained true to us, even as the rest of the world refused to help us in our greatest time of need despite taking our money and having the blood of our children fertilize their soils. And now you ask us to send our children once more to die far from their homes and the bones of their ancestors, and for others who would not do the same for us? You know we will fight side by side with you to defend human space to the last American. Is this not enough? Is it not enough for our sons and daughters to shed their blood with yours, not just for Nova America and Albion, but for Proxima Centauri, New Scotland, New Australia, Pax Africus, and all the other worlds of our colonial brothers and sisters as well? Is it not enough that we would willingly fight and die for Mother Earth, from which we sprang and where the bodies and ashes of our ancestors reside? The president finally stopped speaking, looking at Laurent with eyes full of challenge, as if daring him to say it was not enough. Forcing himself to match the president's gaze, Laurent felt as if the whole thing would blow up in his face if he said the wrong thing now. The Prime Minister unexpectedly came to his rescue again, holding up both hands placatingly as his eyes darted between them both. Gentlemen, I think it would be wise for us to take a short recess and get some fresh air. We can continue this conversation after a short break. What say you? Laurent nodded, relief flooding through his body as the president gave his own curt nod of approval to the Prime Minister's suggestion. They both stood up, Laurent following them as he stood up as well. They all shook hands before the Prime Minister spoke again. We are going to refresh ourselves, Mr. Vice President. Shall we resume here in 30 minutes? Of course, Prime Minister. There is food and refreshments in the next room as well as restroom facilities. Please avail yourself of the offerings. The chef on staff here is excellent. I will see you back here when you are finished. They both nodded and turned around to head to the adjoining room as Laurent watched them leave. He waited until they passed out of sight before sitting heavily back down in his seat, wondering if he had already failed in his mission to secure the commitment of the Tau Ceti Alliance. It was not enough for them to just defend human space. They needed to help defend the entire quadrant. It was time to up the stakes and show them what was really coming, and the Republic was going to have to give them more concessions to get them to agree to fully commit to the alliance.